On Christmas Eve, 1914, something impossible happened. 100,000 men stopped trying to kill each other. They climbed out of their trenches, crossed the battlefield, and shook hands with the enemy. Military commanders tried to bury what happened next. They moved entire regiments, destroyed photographs, censored letters home. Because what those soldiers discovered in no man's land was more dangerous than any weapon. December 1914. The Western Front. A scar cutting through Belgium and France. 600 miles of mud, barbed wire, and corpses. The Great War. The war to end all wars. Except no one told these men it would look like this. The trenches are barely 6 feet deep. Water pools at the bottom, freezing in the winter air. Rats the size of cats move through the darkness. The smell is unforgettable. Rotting flesh, unwashed bodies, chlorine gas lingering in pockets of cold air. At night, you can hear the enemy breathing, coughing, praying in German. Sometimes the trenches are only 30 yards apart, close enough to throw a stone and hit someone, close enough to see their faces when the flares go up. These aren't career soldiers. Most enlisted 5 months ago, convinced they'd be home by autumn. Factory workers from Manchester, farmers from Bavaria, teachers from Paris. Now they're here, in the frozen mud, watching their friends die over a few feet of destroyed farmland. High Command says they're fighting for civilization, for freedom, for the future. But from the bottom of a trench, it just looks like murder. December 24th, late afternoon. The sky is the color of old bruises. Snow begins to fall, covering the torn earth. In the German trenches, something unusual happens. Officers distribute packages from home. Real food, candles, small evergreen trees. Tannenbaum, Christmas trees. The soldiers place them along the trench parapets, light the candles. On the British side, sentries watch with rifles ready. Is this a distraction? A prelude to an attack? Then, as darkness settles, the singing begins. Stille Nacht, heilige Nacht. The melody carries across no man's land, clear and haunting. British soldier Graham Williams would later write, "I thought I was dreaming or dying. Nothing else made sense." The Germans sing verse after verse, hundreds of voices, maybe thousands, harmonizing in the darkness. When they finish, silence. The British soldiers look at each other. Some are crying. Then someone in the British trench starts singing back. The first Noel the angels did say. Now the Germans are listening. Some climb up to see better, forgetting the danger. The carols go back and forth for over an hour. O come all ye faithful, adeste fideles. The same songs, different languages, same longing for home. As midnight approaches, the singing fades. But something has shifted. Some invisible barrier has cracked. Christmas morning. Dawn breaks cold and clear. The guns are silent. Then, from the German trenches, a voice shouts in broken English, "Happy Christmas, Tommy!" A pause. "Happy Christmas, Fritz!" someone yells back. But while the soldiers are singing carols and playing football, something else is happening. In headquarters behind the lines, telephones are ringing. Reports are flooding in. The men have stopped fighting. They're fraternizing with the enemy. "Sir, they're playing games together." The response from High Command is immediate and furious. General Sir Horace Smith Dorrien issues orders. This is to stop immediately. Any officer who permits or encourages such behavior will face court-martial.
From the German side, Crown Prince Ruprecht of Bavaria sends a similar message: "Fraternization is treason. Resume hostilities at once." But here's what's strange. The orders are ignored. Not by a few rebellious soldiers, by entire regiments. The truce continues for days in some sectors, a week in others. The soldiers work together to bury their dead, Germans and British side by side, reading prayers over bodies that rotted in no man's land for months. They repair trenches within sight of each other. No one shoots. Some units establish agreements. We won't fire if you don't fire. One German soldier allegedly told a British private, "Today we have peace. Tomorrow you fire high, we fire high." But the strangest part isn't that it happened, it's what the military did next. Regiments that participated were quietly transferred. The 6th Gordon Highlanders moved north, the Saxon regiments rotated out and replaced with Prussians. Officers who encouraged the truce were reassigned to different fronts. Some were demoted. Their names disappear from official records. Photographs of the truce were confiscated. Letters home describing it were censored or destroyed. What the soldiers discovered in no man's land wasn't just that the enemy was human. They discovered something more dangerous, that they had more in common with the men trying to kill them than with the generals sending them to die. A British private named Frank Sumter wrote, "We spent the afternoon talking to men we'd been taught to hate, and they were just like us, same complaints, same fears, same wish to go home." When they went back to their trenches, they carried that knowledge with them. And knowledge like that makes men difficult to control. Some historians believe the truce was allowed to happen because it was Christmas, a moment of weakness that commanders tolerated. But others see something darker in how it was suppressed. The war needed soldiers who believed in the enemy's inhumanity, who could pull a trigger without hesitation. The truce threatened that belief. Consider this. The Christmas truce happened 5 months into the war, at a time when soldiers still remembered civilian life, still questioned why they were fighting. But by 1915, something had changed. The war became more brutal: gas attacks, flamethrowers, artillery barrages that lasted for days. The propaganda intensified. Every newspaper called the enemy monsters, barbarians, inhuman. And when soldiers suggested another Christmas truce in 1915, their officers made sure it couldn't happen. Artillery strikes were scheduled for Christmas Eve, raids planned for Christmas morning. No silence, no opportunity. By 1916, the soldiers who remembered the first truce were mostly dead. The war claimed them in the Somme, at Verdun, at Passchendaele. And the new soldiers arriving at the front had never known anything but total war. They were easier to control. Brigadier General Morgan Crofton wrote in a private letter decades later, "We couldn't allow them to see each other as human. The war would have ended, and we couldn't let it end. Not yet. Not until the objectives were achieved, territory secured, the enemy broken. The lives of individual soldiers were expendable, but the war itself, that had to continue."
So here are the questions that still haunt this story. If 100,000 soldiers could spontaneously choose peace in the middle of the worst war in human history, why couldn't it be repeated? Why was so much effort spent making sure it never happened again? The military says it undermined discipline, but these same soldiers went back to fighting after the truce ended. They followed orders, attacked when commanded, died when required. So what were the generals really afraid of? Some researchers have found evidence that goes even further. Photographs that were supposed to be destroyed but survived in private collections. Letters that somehow escaped censorship. And in these documents, soldiers describe something that was never mentioned in official histories. They describe agreements, pacts made between enemies. We'll aim high if you aim high. No artillery on our medical stations. We won't target yours. Informal truces that lasted weeks, months in some sectors. And in a few places, reports of soldiers who simply refused to attack, who went through the motions but deliberately missed. These incidents were classified. The soldiers involved were quietly removed. Because if word spread that soldiers could choose not to kill, what would that mean for every war after? What would it mean for the war happening right now? There's a document in the British National Archives, declassified in 1999, a memo from December 1914 sent to all commanding officers on the Western Front. It reads, "Unofficial truces are harmful to offensive spirit. Troops who have fraternized with the enemy should be cycled out and replaced with fresh units. We cannot allow sentiment to interfere with military objectives." Military objectives. Not victory, not peace, not the end of suffering. Objectives.